Okay, thank you guys for being here. Today we're going to do the third class on Vedic psychology. I want to answer kind of three areas of questions that I've been getting a lot of emails and texts about. So I hope this can clarify some of your guys' questions. The first one is, if you have questions in the class, they should be relevant to you making personal changes. So this is different than probably most classes that you take. You know, it's not like, oh, what's that? It's not understanding a concept just because it's interesting. It's actually because you're going to ask the question because you're like, oh, I need to make this change in my life and I'm not sure, I need this one bit of information, so I'm going to ask it. Okay, so try to direct your questions on the personal changes you're going to make. And so you'd ask the question for that. The other thing is, at the end of the lecture each time, I'll ask if you guys have questions. So just hold them till then, please. I've gotten a few emails about how long this course is going to be. It'll be 2 months total. And so then we'll get feedback and see how it goes, and we'll decide what to do after that. But it's like just a 2 month to see what you guys think and if it's helpful to you or not. The third one is homework. So a lot of people are emailing me their homework. So this homework is just for you. It's optional. If you want to introspect and you want to go further with the teachings, you can do the homework. But please don't email to me. I'm not going to like grade you or analyze it, you know. So that's just the three kind of main points I wanted to make before we begin. The next thing is, this is my Wednesday. I just want to give you an example. I had 802 emails to read, and I sent 164 email responses. By the time my day was done, like I literally thought I had like oil in my eyes. I couldn't see because I was on the screen all day just answering emails. I'm not mentioning anything about the text that I also received. So please forgive me. It's not that I don't want to respond to everybody, but I don't have enough time to respond to everybody's emails and texts and asking me like, what time is the class? Is the class still on? What do you think of my homework? What do you think of this and that? Because I also have a full-time job where I have quite a lot of clients that I'm helping every day. So it's not that I don't want to help, but I just can't do that anymore. Okay? So today, I'm going to do something called a sattvic second. Then I'm going to review 3 points from the last lecture because it was 2 weeks ago. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about service as it relates to the gunas. That's what we're studying, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. So what does service look like if you're in the mode of Sattva? What does service look like if you're in the mode of Rajas? What does service look like in the mode of Tamas? And then I'm going to tell you one truth and one secret. And then I'm going to talk about empathy. And then I'll give an optional homework. And the cat is there for a reason. So the sattvic second, what I was saying is, I had asked this also last time at the beginning of the class, right? Like, get clear, why are you here? What is your goal? What are you trying to do with this Vedic psychology information? So just take a minute and think about that. Why are you here for this next half an hour or so? What are you trying to get out of this, out of being here? You could probably do a lot of things with this half an hour, right? So why are you here? Get clear on that in your sattvic second. Some people who like to write, they like to write it down. And then if you take notes during the class, you can look at the end and you can actually see if you accomplished your goal. Okay? So remember, the purpose of Vedic psychology, especially as it relates to us and what we're doing, is to learn about yourself in order to clear out anything that is blocking your mind from advancing spiritually. So that would be why you're here. Okay, so here's a review of the 3 main points from the last lecture 2 weeks ago. The audio still good, Laduli? You can still hear clear? Yeah? Okay, cool. So number 1, sattvic predominant people understand the purpose of the Vedic psychology teachings and they align their actions with their purpose. So what I'm saying when I was asking you, ask your questions related to yourself, how you can improve yourself. You know, so that's how you would align if you want to be in the mode of Sattva. I know why I'm here and my questions are going to relate. You know, that's one example of how you are aligning your actions with the purpose of Vedic psychology. The second one is, the point from last lecture was, in Rajas and Tamas, we can't see things clearly. And it's hard because in those modes we think we can. We think we're seeing clearly. And oftentimes we're proud of that. So in these lower modes of nature, we're consumed mostly by just filling our mind and our body's needs, right? It's all driven by our ahankara and our mind and our body's needs. And the third point was with Rajas and Tamas that I made was that they're not all bad. Actually, they're essential. We need Rajas for action. You see the cat chasing the mouse? That could not happen if the cat was in Tamas or Sattva. So to chase the mouse, to chase anything you want in your life, to go for something, to do seva, you need Rajas. That's the propeller. That's the only one out of the three that enable you to act. So no Rajas means no movement and nothing would get done. The reason why I'm highlighting this now up front is because I'm going to go into the negative side of what, like the negative side of Rajas looks like in Seva, the negative side of Tamas, so I don't want it to be like, oh my God, Rajas is horrible, I don't want any Rajas. I'm just highlighting the negative because it's hard to see. It's hard to see it, that's why. But Rajas is crucial. It's essential to have. And same with Tamas. If we don't have Tamas, then no sleep. You know how that feels, you guys, right? When you have no sleeps, that's the worst, right? That means that you don't have enough Tamas. Too much Rajas, right? And also you need it for stability. So this whole idea with Bhakti is we want to have a fixed mind on Krishna, right? Fixed mind, so you need to be stable to be fixed. Rajas is always moving, So anyway, that's the point. And we just need to know how to use these, how to use Rajas and how to use Tamas in the way that can help us do our sattvic service. So a simple thing would be, I'm trying to do my service in this beautiful sattvic service, but I'm getting good sleep, and I'm moving, I'm getting it done. I'm moving towards that goal. That's how you could use it in that way. The only thing is that Rajasic or Tamasic mindsets, they make us believe things that may not be true. One thing is like, oh, I've changed so much, I've changed a lot, Maybe you have, that's good, but maybe not as much as you think. Or I understand the Guru's teachings, I've got it, I know, this is what he means. I don't know if you've ever had a conversation with someone else, and it's like, no, he didn't mean that at all, I don't see it like that. And it's like, not at all, this person, how could they see it like that? And the other person, like, if there's 3 of you, it's even worse, or 4 of you, So, that old game telephone, where you pass the secret on? You just say one sentence, right? And it goes the whole way around, and what the first person said and the last person doesn't match at all. And that's what's the simple thing, like, do you want a piece of chocolate? Can you imagine with these very subtle teachings that the Guru is trying to teach, how much we must be probably misunderstanding through our own samskaras, So this is one of the hard things. In Rajas, we're like, I know, and in Tamas too. Or I know what love is. That's like the biggest joke, right? I know what love is. Or I'm not jealous, not me, it's him, Or, what I'm doing is correct. What I'm doing is right, and the Guru loves it, He's so happy with me. Or, like, look at those people, they need to change. What is wrong with them? They're so tamasic, Not me, though. Or they don't get it, And then the final one I highlighted is a real tamasic ahankara. They think that the Guru should change. Forget about everybody else around. You need to change. You need to change. You have this problem, and here's what it is, and here's how you need to change. And that happens. So anyway, these are some examples, of how Rajas and Tamas can make us believe things which may not necessarily be true. So the punchline, you see that nice sattvic lake? So peaceful. The punchline is that we'll misinterpret the Guru's teachings if our mind is not in a state of this sattvic clarity. So that's why we're doing this. That's why we're now on the 3rd lecture, looking at another angle of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. So the Guru's teachings are not just an intellectual exercise. They require us to understand his heart and then serve from our heart. So this is a quote from Babaji. He said, to truly understand my teachings, it requires a thorough purification of the personality. This is a complete change of heart, not just filling the head with information or saying sweet, superficial words of love. I want everyone to take the Vedic psychology teaching seriously and make much needed changes. Only a fool would waste this precious opportunity. So Babaji's not mincing his words, right? He's serious. And so that's what he wants. But to understand the Guru's heart, first we have to understand our own. And to some people that may feel selfish. I'm here to serve. Why should I be looking at myself or spending time on my feelings or my thoughts or my needs? But you can't get around that. You have to understand your own heart and clear that out in order to see his and understand his. And so here's just an example of a woman, like, see how close she is to the mirror, but do you see how she's not looking at herself? Even though her face is like right here, she's still looking at someone else. And then also love and hate. Pretty much that's what our mind is running on all the time, you know, so we have to be able to see that in ourselves. So what is our heart like when we serve? Sattvic, Rajasic, and Tamasic service, or seva. Can you see the cat? Yes. Can you see the mouse? Do you think that that cat is in the mode of sattva? No. Knowing the nature of a cat? Sattva would be peaceful, loving. You think he wants to pick up the baby mouse and like give it a little hug? No, right? He wants to chase it and eat it. He wants to use the Rajasic energy to hunt and chase, and then he wants to like devour it, right? So sattva, just as a reminder, sattva is in the mode of goodness. When you're around somebody who's sattvic, it feels like that person's very pure or simple, very peaceful. That person is clear. They're very clear in their thinking. They're light. You feel light after talking with them, right? And they're inclusive. They're not exclusive. It's not just me and you. You know, it's the whole, they're thinking of the whole community. They're thinking of everybody. And Rajas, that's a nice contrast to Sattva, right? It's about passion. It's about action. It's bright. It's loud. It's proud. Very competitive, very controlling. And then overreacting to a lot of things, right? That's Rajas. And then we have Tamas. That's more like dark, you know, inertia, very critical of everything, very lethargic, destructive. Tamasic energy is destructive, confused, slow, stubborn, like my way or the highway, and selfish. Okay? That's just a quick little review. So now let's look at service. Is it selfish service we're doing or selfless service? Now look at the cat. Okay, so here's a cycle that one way it could go if you're in the mode of Rajas or Tamas and doing seva. You see an opportunity to serve, right? But before that, you see the star, the gold star. I am the surrendered, most humble servant. I'm doing my japa. I'm so surrendered. I'm the most humble. Then I see an opportunity to serve. Then I serve. I enjoy the appreciation. I enjoy the praise. It feels so good to have this sense of power and this sense of control. I want to do more of that. That feels good to my hankara, my ego. That feels really good. So I want to do more of that, and I do more. But I hate those damn people who challenge my power, who challenge my position. I will control them, I will manipulate them, and I will use and demolish them. Now, this is not actually consciously what we're thinking, right? But that's how it feels when you're standing there trying to engage in seva and try to work with someone who's in the mode of Rajas and Tamas. They don't see it. They're not thinking these things, you know? They might say, oh, I see the opportunity to serve, and I'm the most surrendered, humble servant. But really what's going on is this. That's driving it. And then what happens is, usually, there's a clash between two people's ahankaras, right? And now they hate each other, or maybe they don't want to admit that, but there's now they're taking distance from each other, but they're still the most surrendered, humble servant, so the cycle starts again. And they get in another seva with another person. And guess what? Train wreck, again, it never really gets worked through. It never gets talked through, and the humility doesn't usually come. More, it's like complaining about that person and trying to figure out how to avoid them at the best, you know, and then do the seva again with somebody else in some other way, you know? And so that's Rajas and Tamas, you know? And the reason why I'm highlighting it is so we can kind of laugh about it, because it's just our ahankara, it's not us. And because we're in a community that actually has a big potential for growth. I don't know any other community in Bhakti Yoga that's doing Vedic psychology like this. It's a very rare and precious opportunity, you know, by Babaji's grace, to give us this opportunity to look at it together and say, okay, if I'm doing any of that stuff, how can I get out of it so we can actually really come together and be like the role model of a healthy bhakti community. So in Tamasic service, let's just boil it down. I'm going to go a little in depth on each one. Tamasic service, like the mantra is, how can I get more? How can I get more? So Tamasic service, they underdo typically, but they overtake. They hesitate, they procrastinate, they hate, they blame fate, they aren't straight, they take the bait, meaning they get tricked easily, and they're always late and they make you wait. So I tried to rhyme it a little to have some fun.
Always late.
Right? So I said it fast. Underdo, overtake, hesitate, procrastinate, hate, blames fate, isn't straight, right? They're deceitful. Takes the bait. I tried to do it for a little fun. And they're always late and makes you wait. And how can I get more? How can I get more? So another level of the Tamasic service here. They're confident that they know the guru's desire, so they don't even ask him. They tell him what to do, and they tell him, here's what's best for you. They're negative, they're doubtful, fearful, and they have phobias. They have a scarcity mindset, right? Scarcity mindset. Some of you guys might have heard of this before. You can research it. The scarcity mindset is that I don't have enough. Literally, you could be a millionaire. Actually, a lot of millionaires have this mindset. I don't have enough. I need more, I need more, I need more. So that's what it feels like also. They're sometimes called energy vampires, right? Where you feel like I've given so much to this person and they still want more. It's like insatiable. They boast about their listening abilities. They say that, oh, I'm such a good listener, when really they're not, or they're so intuitive, you know? And sometimes I'll say, let's check that intuition. Did you check with the person that really is actually what they were thinking? No, but I just know it. Okay. You feel a sense of heaviness after interacting with them because they're heavy. They're dull, they're dark, you know? They use others to do their work, yet they believe they've worked the hardest out of anyone, and they've given their life to the guru. They'll even say it. They're very rigid and inflexible in their thinking, and they do not change their ways to consider other options. That's a lot of times why in our community we don't get along, you know, because it's like, nope, my way, you know, my way or the highway, you know, instead of like, could that other person even have 5% of a little bit? Could they be right a little bit in how they're seeing me? Could I change? Could I bend a little bit? A lot of times that doesn't happen. When you work with somebody in tamasic service, they make very simple problems seem difficult. But it would only be a simple problem if you're in the mode of sattva. You think it's simple, but if they're in tamas, it's not simple because they're confused and they have you feel like you're going in circles sometimes. So in tamasic service, they can't figure out why people don't like them. Even though they're all those other things, plus they're late to the meetings, they're slow to respond to the emails, or maybe they don't respond at all. They're unclear, they're inefficient, and they do like circular discussions. You're like, I just wanted to ask about how to change the light bulb. Why was that a half an hour conversation or whatever? Sometimes you feel like that, right, with people? When it's just like you're going around and around. They don't follow through. They're deceitful, selfish, greedy, and have, like I said, these insatiable needs. They doubt everything, including the guru. They wish that he would just see things clearly by realizing how great they are and how bad their enemy is. They brag about their service and their position. They have a very critical eye. No matter how good things are, they see the bad side of others and they try to turn people against them. They hold grudges for years and they're like revengeful. They want to get back at them. And the worst part is that they'll read all these points or hear them from me and they still not realize that it's about them. In their mind they're going, yeah, I know who that is. I know who that is. Now remember, we all have some of these points. So I'm not trying to like drag anyone through the coals. I'm also, saying these are some of the things I do too sometimes. We all have some tamasic points. And that's why I'm trying to make it a little bit humorous, like with cats and stuff, so we can like laugh about it and be like, all right, yeah, I've got some of that and I want to get out of it.
What is brags?
Huh? Brags. Boasts. Brag is like boast. They boast. So now we're moving into rajas. What's rajas like? You see the cat? He's like, zip. The other cat had a huge cake and he's just sedentary and eating. This one, rajas, is fast and moving, action. So rajas, the mantra is, how can I control more? Right? So tamas is, how can I get more? Rajas is, how can I control more? They overdo, they underdeliver, they inflate, they think they're great, they're passionate, they create, they can't wait, they berate, they're on your nerves, they grate, and they love a mate. So I'll say it again. They overdo, they underdeliver. They inflate, puff up, they inflate, they think they're great. They're passionate, they like to create, right? The rajas is always creative. They can't wait, impatient, They berate, right? They're berate like they kind of come down hard on you, yeah. They berate you, bad. They're on your nerves and they grate, they don't let it go. They keep pounding on you. And they love a mate. Rajas is passion, so they love a mate. So look at this, rajasic service. You see the cat? This is rajasic service. The cat's supposed to be the servant. So if you're in the rajas mode, you have ideas that are better than anyone else's, including the gurus, whom they don't bother to ask until after they've done it. They do it themselves, and then they're like, oh yeah, by the way, FYI, instead of like, what do you think? You think this might be a good idea, Babaji? It's a very forceful mindset. You know, Rajas is a force of nature. And so they have a very forceful mindset and very intense. You know, when you're around them, you feel like maybe like you've been burned by a fire or a big hurricane came through. Whereas with the Tamas energy, you feel heavy after, right? Rajas is like, woo! It's a whirlwind. They overpromise oftentimes. Yeah, I'll do that. I've got that. Yeah. And then they underdeliver. Maybe they forgot or they just committed to too much, you know? You feel like a sense of ungroundedness after you've interacted with them. Like, whoa, what just happened? What? Hold on. They're high in something called cognitive empathy, which I'm going to get into later, and they're low in something called affective empathy. They tend to be controlling, rigid, bossy, kind of their way, the highway, which is also similar. Some of these overlap, Rajas and Tamas, you know. And they're driven by their need to feel smart and in control. And the recipient of this service begins to wonder, are they serving me or am I serving them? I mean, this cat is like being fed by a silver spoon, bite by bite, probably of a stir-fried chicken or something. Okay. Now this is another, see the Rajas thinks they're cool. You know, the cat has the sunglasses on. They compete, they're cunning, they're clever, they're relentless at defeating everyone in their circle so they can be number one. They don't follow through on their word. They do something called future faking. Not everybody does it, but you can look up this term. Future faking is like saying you'll do it, but you actually don't do it, which is different than saying you'll do it. In other words, this is like a conscious thing. They know they're not going to do it, but they say they do it to manipulate. Versus just flat out Rajas is you say you're going to do it because you're like vata deranged, and you're like, yeah, you get all excited, and maybe you forget. But future faking is a little bit more malicious. It's a conscious thing you do to kind of control. You can look it up. They make decisions based on their needs and not on yours, and they try to convince you why it is right. They're exclusive. They do not involve others in the service. If they do engage others, they take their credit for their work. We've all been there, right? Maybe not in the circles of Bhakti, but where somebody says, yeah, you can help, and then they don't give any credit to you, you know? Like, so that happens a lot, just even in the corporate world. You know, I've had that happen a lot to me. They're jealous of everyone, but they don't realize it. They play mind games. They're overly confident and proud. They don't care if people don't like them. It's their problem. They fool many people into thinking they're humble and surrendered. And they'll read these points and still not realize it's about them. So this is what I'm saying is Rajas and Tamas have, they can't see clearly for a lot of reasons. But Sattva is the only one who can see clearly. So here's the sattvic seva. How can I give more? Right? Tamas, how can I get more? Sattva, how can I give more? Rajas, how can I control more? And sattvic service, they're moderate with everything. They're just in the middle. They're moderate. They meditate. They deliberate. They're straight, clear. They're first rate. They're not late. They have no hate. They're sweet like a date, and they're compassionate. Sattvic. Moderate, meditate, deliberate, straight, like a straight shooter. Not hurtful with the straightness, but honest, but clear and precise. They're not late. Usually they're early. They don't have hate. They're sweet like a date. After you talk with them, you feel like, oh, you feel uplifted, you know? Not like, woo, not hyper, but uplifted. And they're compassionate. Sattvic service. They're good listeners. They have an open mind. They're very positive. They have the opposite of what's called a scarcity mindset, right? So they have what's called an abundance mindset. They feel full. They feel that they have everything that they need, and how can they share? Whereas scarcity is like, I don't have enough, I need more. So when you're around them, they're generous, they're giving, because they have so much, all they can do is give. They're high in what's called compassionate empathy, which I'll get into. They work very efficiently to meet the guru's needs without making him change his ways, including what he likes and whom he chooses to associate with. They respect his personal opinions, basically, and what he likes and dislikes. In sattvic service, they're generous, and you feel a sense of this lightness after interacting with them. They're very clear and concise in their communication. They respond quickly and efficiently. They make difficult problems seem simple. So that's the opposite, right? In Tamas, a simple problem, difficult. In Sattva, a difficult problem seems simple. So that's how you know you're dealing with somebody in sattvic seva. You're like, I don't even know what to do about this. I can't figure out. And then they're like, no problem, I've got it. And then that's it. And then all of a sudden they did it. And you're like, whew, You didn't have to involve me. You didn't have to, that was such a relief. So that's how it would feel if somebody's doing sattvic service to you. They anticipate your needs also. So they're like, okay, like Vilas is so nice. He knows that I get a run hot. So whenever I come, he has the AC turned down for me. He's anticipating my needs. He's not thinking about what he needs. He's wearing a winter parka. No. Not that bad, but kind of, right? So you're anticipating my needs. You have to be in the mode of sattva to see that. And then in sattvic service, they manage the details without involving the guru and all the unnecessary stuff. Also in sattvic service, they make decisions clearly and quietly. It's not a drama. It's not involving too many people. It's not confusing. It's just clear and quiet. They're honest about their weaknesses. They don't make a show or try to be someone they're not. They include other disciples in the service and they give them credit for it. They love who the guru loves. This is a hard one because usually there's so much jealousy around the guru. But actually if you're matching his heart and if he loves someone that you hate, that's a big problem. They treat disciples with the same love and affection that they treat the guru with. They think of ways to help out whenever possible. They take responsibility for their mistakes. They set goals and timelines and they reach them. They say, okay, here's what I'm going to do. Then they do it. And they're frequently introspecting and improving upon themselves. So which one are you? Now what to do? Self-assessment, which category are you in? So if you are sattvic predominant, you will probably be thinking something like, I don't need to change that much. I'm realizing like I'm mostly doing this sattvic seva, but there's some areas where I can improve. So you vow to immediately take responsibility for your mistakes. You apologize to others because you're like, oh, I didn't realize I did that. Because just say you're sattvic predominant. It doesn't mean you're only sattvic. It means that there's some rajasic and tamasic things that you've also been doing, right? So you would say, shoot, I didn't realize I did that when I was trying to serve with other people. You take responsibility immediately for your mistakes. You contact those people, you meet with them, you apologize, and you open your heart to understand your guru's heart more deeply through this process. That's why you would be doing it, right? You want to remove any blockage. If you're rajasic predominant, you will probably think that you need to change some minor things, but you see more clearly where others obviously need to change. That's what Rajas is really good at. You will be sure to educate them immediately about their faults and their mistakes. That's the mode of Rajas. Tamas, if you're Tamas predominant, most likely you're going to be confident that you don't need to change anything, and you're perfect just the way you are. Just give me another piece of cake. Okay? I'm going to share with you a truth and a secret. The truth is that there are very rare few people who are predominantly sattvic. Predominantly sattvic. It doesn't mean you don't have any sattva, but it's very rare. And that is a bitter truth and a painful truth, and please don't hate me for it. Okay? I don't think I'm sattvic predominant. I'm like Rajas USA, so I don't think I'm anyone great. Okay? I think I got to work on myself too. I don't think I'm sattvic predominant. So, but knowing, like hearing everything I said, it can feel very heavy. Like, oh my God, I have so much to change. If you're really introspecting and looking, there could be quite a lot that you might feel like, or maybe there's just one thing, but you don't know how the heck you're going to change that thing. So it can feel very overwhelming to change so many points about our character. But what Babaji's message that I read to you is, he said this is like a personality overload, or like a personality, overhaul. You have to do a very deep cleansing and changing of your personality, and that's no joke. It's very painful. So you can feel overwhelmed. But the secret I'm going to tell you is that you can change everything, all of those, 3 pages for each one of problems, by just changing one thing. Okay? This is the good news. And that one thing is empathy. All of the problems that I listed on those whole 3 pages of slides about Rajas and Tamas, 6 pages total, is because we actually don't have very high empathy. So empathy is the key. True change comes by empathy. Empathy is the capacity to understand or feel what another person is experiencing from within their frame of reference. And that means you have the capacity to place yourself in another person's position. Empathy, we've all heard of it. We all probably could define it ourselves, But when you really look more deeply at it, you will see that that's the root cause of all of these problems. So scientists have identified 3 types of empathy. There's cognitive empathy, which is in your thinking, in your head, right? Like perspective taking. Like, I know Kamala has her head all wrapped up. She must be either getting a cold or she's feeling cold, or both, right? So I can think through that. Am I feeling bad for her or cold? No, if I have cognitive empathy. It's just a thinking thing. Like, you're able to think she must be like that. But my heart, I'm with my own feeling, okay? So you can understand their perspective. You can identify with it. I kind of know your mind. But I'm standing in my own shoes. I'm not feeling, right? The second kind is affective empathy, okay? This is how you feel in response. So just say I'm having affective empathy. I would see, oh, Kamala looks cold. She has a cold. I feel so bad. Like, she must be feeling low. Maybe she wants to lay down. Like, I would be starting feeling in my heart, like, oh, my heart would kind of be melting for her. I would want to, like, mother her, get her a tea and put a blanket on her, you know? So I would be feeling something more than thinking. You're like, yeah, I'm coming over after class. Okay. So if your friend is anxious, then you could feel like, oh, I know your heart. I feel that too. You would feel it with them, right? So those are 2 quite different types of empathy. And compassionate empathy is the best one. That's when you've got both. So you can say, yeah, I can tell she's cold. Oh, and I feel bad for her, she's cold. You know, that together is a very, very powerful kind of empathy to have. I know your mind and I know your heart. Okay? So I want to tell you a quick story about my friend Laura. This is my high school friend. We've been friends for a long, long, long time. I think I met her when I was 7. Now we're 51. And when my father died, I was 30. I think I've already told you guys some of the story. But I was 30. He just dropped out of a heart attack right in front of me. And in front of our whole family. But Laura knew him since we were like 7. So when I called her and told her, she actually, I forgot where she was living. I think maybe in England. And we were from New Hampshire, you know, the US. But she was home, like visiting in between her traveling life, whatever she was doing. And she came right over, you know. And I was so sad when my dad died. I'd never heard of Bhakti yoga or anything about spiritual, really. So I didn't know anything like we're not this body or anything like that, you know. So I was heavily grieving. And I had a whole stack of all these pictures of my father and all these letters he had written me over the years. And my friend Laura sat there with me and cried. She sat there and she cried with me. I would read her the letters and she's like, oh my God. Like, I'm like, oh, are you more sad than me? Like, I mean, I was really sad, but I really felt like we were one heart. So that's affective empathy, right? But then after the aftermath, a few weeks, then I actually had to end up quitting my job in Boston, and I had to assume the position of CEO of his software company because he died and there was no successor. So now I'm a 30-year-old CEO of a software company, which, as you guys know, I don't know anything about technology or software, but I had to do it because I had an MBA and I knew the business side of how to make a business successful. So I had to run that company. And Laura, thank you God, was still in town because she wasn't even living in the US, but she was still in town. So I called her, I'm like, Laura, I cannot run this company. I'm 30 years old, first of all, and everybody's older than me, and they remember me when I was a young girl, so they're treating me like a little girl. They're like, whatever. We used to play Chinese checkers together. They were so disrespectful. They were drinking beer in front of me on the job. It was like so hard. I'm like, can you come help me? I just need somebody to tell me I'm not going crazy. Please, any position you want. And she's like, no, I forgot. I think she was going to Egypt next, and she had a boyfriend. But I'm like, please, please. And so actually, she understood. She actually was able to put herself in my shoes, and she said, I can't imagine. Your dad just died. You had to move to a different state, very far away from where you were living, to run his company. You feel overwhelmed. You're living with your mother at age 30, who's now already on Match.com dating. I mean, it was really hard. And so she had this cognitive empathy as well. Like, she put herself in my shoes, and she came and she worked for 2 years for me. She put her whole life on hold, and she worked. So she had those two together. She had the compassion and empathy, you can see. She was like crying with me. She put herself in my shoes. And then my dad's, the anniversary of his death was a couple of days ago on August 3rd. And still, 21 years later, she texted me, thinking of you and your dad. I'm like, oh my God. Like, she's a very sweet friend, So that's an example just for you probably all have somebody like that in your life who's been there with you at your dark time, who's cried with you, who's gone the extra mile and put themselves in your shoes. And I think she's my only friend who's ever done that. That's why I wanted to highlight the story, to give you a feel of what it would feel like for somebody who has both cognitive empathy and the affective empathy, this compassionate empathy. So the empathy types are cognitive, which is, I understand you. Like in my head, I got it, Affective, oh, I feel for you, and compassionate, I understand and I feel for you, okay? So the brain on empathy. Empathy it's a complex neurological process, actually. And it can be studied, which I think is so cool. Scientists can see it. They do like a type of MRI. And they can actually see the part of your brain that lights up when you experience empathy. They do brain scans. So it's not like a woo-woo concept. It's actually, they can study the brain and see it. Isn't that cool? What parts get activated when you do different tasks? And so there's something called mirror neurons. You've probably heard of them. I think Babaji's talked about them too recently. I think he was calling them like ape neurons yesterday, or monkey neurons, right? So what happens is when they can see empathy happening in your brain, your neurons are lighting up at the same as the other person who's actually experiencing it. Okay? So how it would look, just say Kamala, I'm like, oh my God, she's cold, and I'm having that like really strong compassion empathy. If you saw my brain, you would literally see the neurons lighting up in the part where I'm feeling cold. Although I'm not feeling cold, I'm sweating, So, but that's the extent of how empathy can be. And if you have really high empathy, you actually physically can feel the pain of someone that you care about, right? You can physically feel it. So if you have that, what a gift, I think, in this community, because we can use that in our seva to think about how we might be affecting other people, So mirror neurons take the other person's point of view. Thank you. Vilas is showing some very strong compassion and empathy, and he's turning the AC on. But then we've got Daoji, who we have to have empathy for him too, because he's too cold and I'm too hot. This is hard. So human mirror neurons, right? So here's another example. If you see this image, you guys can all see this image of two people hugging, right? Your brain will interpret it as if you personally are hugging. If they study your brain and they have it all hooked up or whatever they do for an MRI, it would actually look in your brain like you're hugging somebody. Isn't that cool? That's the mirror neurons. So that's why the scientists who discovered these neurons called it mirror, because you're literally mirroring the thing that you're watching, but you're not actually having that experience. So that's very, very powerful. So there's a study on mirror neurons at the University of Birmingham, where some people, this is what I already said, right? They're capable of literally feeling another person's physical or emotional pain. So in the study, they showed a picture, a video of somebody hammering and hitting their thumb, right? And watching it, right? Like you're like, oh, right? But actually the part of your brain lights up like you've literally hit your thumb. It's so amazing. So that shows that I think we're hardwired to have connections with humans. And that's why when we don't have connections, even if we live in a community, sometimes we say, I live in an ashram, but I feel so alone. I feel so misunderstood. I feel so lonely. Because we're supposed to connect. Our brains are wired to do that. So that's why this is so important. And I'm like really slowing down and highlighting this empathy. Because if we can figure this out, we can go beyond this rajas and tamas quite easily. If we can get into our own heart and really start focusing on our empathy. So, pain is a powerful motivator. That's the point. If you have empathy, right? If you can feel another person's pain as your own, you would never want to hurt them like that if you're feeling it, right? It can motivate you to end that person's pain. Like I said, if I'm feeling like, oh my God, poor Kamala, she's freezing, I'm not going to sit there and watch her. I'm going to want to do something to help her if I'm feeling it, right? So that's the idea, is if we can use the empathy to get beyond our own ahankara, and being triggered by what someone said or did to us, and think, oftentimes what I think, as a psychologist, if somebody's doing something hurtful to me, I'll think, I feel bad for them, because I think, what state of mind must they be in to not even see how they're hurting themselves and how they're hurting me or the guru or something. They must not be doing very well, and they can't see it, and that's sad. So I try to have compassion. I try to give that person space. I try to listen. I try to, the best I can, to understand. If you can see, probably they have a very big samskara that's being triggered. And sometimes it's not an obvious thing. They can just seem like, oh, that person has a big ego. But really, why do they act like that? There must be something driving them that's blocking their natural ability to empathize, right? And that's sad. So then that means we have to empathize even more. When you see somebody who can't do that, it's not our job to be like, screw you. It's our job to go, oh wow, they're really blocked right now. So let's empathize even more for them. So the problem is, it's not so easy to feel others' pain when we are in pain of our own, right? So they're in pain, but we also might be in pain. So this, I put a few pictures. Like, see how jealous this girl is of her little brother with the mom giving a hug? Or you see this little boy and this little girl, they want the ice cream too, you know? So this is, we don't, maybe not call it pain, but it's like we're triggered. There's something about that we want or we don't want, that we're always in that mode of like and dislike instead of rising above that and being like, I wonder how that other person's doing. You know, I didn't see them at kirtan for a few days. I wonder if they're okay. You know, or like Jaya often will write if I'm not there and she checks on me. You know, she has empathy. She's like, wants to make sure that everybody's okay. And then sometimes I'm like, I'm sick or I'm working. But that's the idea of a community, is that we kind of look out for each other and we don't think the worst of the person. We think the best. We think from a compassionate, give that person the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they're going through a hard time. Maybe they need a listening ear, you know? So there's one exception to this rule about this empathy thing. Despite our own emotion, this is a crazy thing. I just want to drop it, it's kind of like a bomb. But despite our own emotional pain, we somehow are able to overly empathize with the pain of someone who's been abusive to us, or who acts in a similar way to that of the abuser. So I'm not going to like do a whole topic on that right now. I'm just planting a seed, and I'll get into that in the future. Okay? So what I'm saying up until now is we have so much of our own triggers that we don't notice anybody else. But if that person acts in an abusive way to us, then somehow we are overly empathetic to them. So there's a whole science behind that, I'll explain that later. It's some scar I land from our childhood is all I'll say for now. But that's important to note. So our own emotional pain, whether we are aware of it or not, blocks our ability to empathize with others' feelings in a sincere way. Okay? And herein lies the crux of the problem when it comes to providing sattvic seva. I think I'm going to stop here because Babaji will be here in a few minutes, and I want to leave time for questions. Okay? So I will remember to start here next time. I would say for homework, if you're interested, listen to the recording of this and review it again and just see what you can introspect on what type of seva you think that you've been providing, and then watch yourself over the week and notice how often, try to raise your awareness on what type of seva you're providing and how it is that you might be able to move into a sattvic seva if you can. Okay? So any questions?
I have a question, Joshika. Before we discuss, can you hear me?
Yes. I can't see you,
Okay.
but I can hear you.
Yeah, before we discuss that, if you change the color of your dress, basically the top ones, instead of wearing a black shirt, if you wear a white shirt, then it will change to bring you to from Rajas to Sattvic or something. And I'm trying to follow, how does that really affect that? I'm trying to practice that, but I have not really experienced that yet. I've been doing that almost for last maybe week to 10 days now.
So what is the question is, how does it practically speaking help you get into the sattva?
Sattvic by changing the dress.
Okay, because color is very powerful. Color is very powerful. So you might not have the awareness to notice it, but like if you are wearing white, especially the top half right by your eyes, you guys, if you're wearing white, it's going to affect your mind. It's just that it might not be affecting it at your level of awareness to notice it, and you may need to do more than just that. Sometimes these are subtle things, and eventually you hit the tipping point, and then it accumulates enough of these sattvic inputs that you feel it. But the way it affects you is white and pastel is sattvic. So it will lift the mind a little more into sattva, but it's not the only thing. You probably need to do more inputs to really feel something,
Okay, thank you. Other thing is this, I'm seeing this empathy is primarily the awareness. When you become more and more aware of yourself, then you slowly develop the empathy.
Actually, that's a good point, yes. When it's not yourself per se, it's your inner child. Some of you know about this concept, some of you don't. You can research it. I will end up talking about it in some lectures, but maybe not in this lecture series of just this 2 months. But when you become more and more aware of your inner child, which are your child, like your feelings, basically. Once you start acknowledging and validating your feelings, no matter how bad they are, I hate this person, whatever else it is, I'm not saying act on it, but acknowledge that that is real and that is there, and then you nurture that, then you'll notice other people and their feelings. But right now what's happening is we don't even know we have an inner child, and if we do, we don't know how the heck to work with it. And so that thing is biting us and bothering us all the time, but we don't realize it, so then we're like pointing at the other person, thinking it's them, and that's why we want to educate them and get them to change. But you're right, it's awareness, yeah. Thank you, Purushottam. Great questions. Anything else?
You're talking about over-empathy, empathizing. You're talking about codependent, weren't you?
Yes.
Yes, codependence.
Codependence.
Yes.
Other type of things, it's hard to label, you know, but in codependency, yes, that's one type of people who over-empathize. Other types do too. So it's not
So the codependent, what kind of gunas are they in?
That's a good study for you.
Okay.
Analyze that this week.
Rajas, I think.
Analyze yourself this week and see. 1, are you codependent? And 2, what are you in? Rajas or Tamas or Sattva? Good question. Good introspective question. Any other questions?
Yes, Joshika, this is Badra.
Haribol Bhadra.
Haribol. I have a question regarding how to practice empathy on a long distance, in the sense that, you know, there are some exchanges between devotees or, spiritual sisters, brothers, whatever, and you are not, because I feel that your explanation is based more on like face-to-face interaction, in which you can really see and experience the state of the other person in face-to-face. But when you are dealing with some situations long distance, I feel you don't have the same chance to really connect with the other person to see how they are doing, or if they are maybe there's something wrong. So what is your advice regarding that related to empathy? Thank you.
Good question. Yeah, it's harder, right, when you can't see them, when you're not interacting. What I would say, just try it for a week, especially if you're doing an active seva where you're on email. For every email that you're about to send it to yourself first. And then be like, oh, how would I like to receive that? I didn't even say Haribol, or I didn't even say thank you, and I'm ordering them around, or I'm giving half the information, or I write an email this long. Send it to yourself first. That's how you put yourself in their shoes and go, oh, actually, I wouldn't even like to receive that. You know? It's true. I think Babaji's probably here.
Yes.
Okay, thank you guys. I'll see you next week. Haribol.